these people is we got to sit down, we got to figure out what is success, and then we got to figure out, okay, what are some goals that can be achieved between now and the end of today, a week from today, 6 months from today, a year from today, and we stay in that realm. And then next thing you know, you start hacking away at these goals, and then you're off into your destination.
Welcome to the Land Life Podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
Hey guys, welcome to the Land Life Podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, like I always say, don't forget, like, subscribe. If you're getting value from this podcast, leave a comment. Guys, today I got a guest who he's an ISKA World Kickboxing Champion, I believe 5 times. The guy fought Mirko Cro Cop. He's a life coach. And today, on this day, what's the date? Friday, June 24th, he became an Amazon #1 best-selling author with the book Boom, B-O-O-M. Randy Boom Blake. Randy, how you doing, man?
Man, that was a great introduction. I am doing awesome. I like that.
Let's do it. Let's do it. How you doing, Randy? Where are you at in the country? What part of the country are you in?
I am in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right
Beautiful
smack dab
Tulsa.
in the middle.
Beautiful Tulsa. Randy and I met years ago, so we were both part of Chuck Norris's World Combat League. We both were with a team called the Oklahoma Destroyers. And I met Randy. Randy was a star on the show. I was a guy they let be on the show for a couple shows. And then they're like, you know what? We're going to find somebody else to take your place. We got some superstars here like Randy. So I was on the show for a little while with Chuck Norris and Randy. And then, Randy stuck around for quite a while longer and, continued on with a super successful kickboxing career. So Randy, tell us we know where we're at now. You're a best-selling author, life coach. Things are good right now. Kind of bring us all the way back. How did it start and how did we get to the point we're at right now?
Oh, wow. So let's just go back to childhood. I think a lot of martial artists or maybe even fighters could probably relate to this. I was bullied, man. Was put in headlocks, that was spit on, thrown on the ground, like literally. My mom put me in martial arts. And by the way, I grew up in Ohio, by the way, so I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. That's how I got started in the martial arts, was through bullying. So I kind of stuck with that. I loved it. It kind of helped with my confidence. Then we transitioned to Oklahoma. So my mom's job relocated. So my dad had to sacrifice all his stuff, packed our bags, and we moved. Came across a martial arts school. And fighting was never really in my mind. I was more of a practitioner. So I love the idea of being able to hit, targets, pads, things of that nature. Maybe do some light kind of semi-contact sparring. Graduated high school. I went off. I decided I want to be like Michael Jordan, play basketball. That didn't quite work out because in my mind, I think a lot of people can probably relate to this when your parents, when they tell you you're going to move out the house, okay, don't come back, but you need to have it all together. You need to have an 800 credit score. You need to, you need to have 15 degrees. You need to have it all together.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that stuff was kind of going on in my mind. Well, I knew I needed a full ride scholarship. I knew that. So I didn't want to accept no, or I didn't want to accept a half scholarship or a partial. So I literally went all across the U.S., man, just trying out all these different colleges, man. Any college from D1, D2, D3, junior colleges, you name it. So I hit a gig in Oklahoma in like some small podunk town. And just as I thought the words, we're going to give you this full ride, he goes, well, I don't have any more money to give you a full ride. Like, you're good, but I can give you a walk on and let's just see how things go for this season. And next season, we'll get the money rolling back in and we can get you going for next year. And I took it because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I was just kind of burned out at that time.
Sure. Yeah.
So really making a long story short with that, man, I dropped out of college. And you guys will kind of read that in my book too, which I've got here, by the way. It's my physical copy. Boom.
Perfect.
So drop out of college, and guess where that had led me back to? It led me back to martial arts, but it also led me back to, or not back to, it led me into kind of the club life. So I was kind of battling with martial arts and clubbing at the same time, and then essentially partying,
Yeah.
being around that whole lifestyle, what that brings. It wasn't good. I was headed down a dark path. The good news is in martial arts, I had this instructor at the time. His name was David Master Kick Bolton. He's passed away, so he's not no longer here. But he had always stop and tell me, "Dude, you need to do the fighters class." So at that time, I was like, "Okay, fighters class. What does that even mean?" He goes,
Yeah.
"No, dude, listen to me. I see how you spar." He goes, "You're really good. If you would just get in here, you can actually see what it feels like to hit somebody and maybe knock somebody out one day." Because in martial arts class, I mean, you do semi-contact sparring. It's not
Sure.
full-on hitting. It's just enough to demonstrate that you can hit somebody and kick him in the head or punch him in the jaw, but you don't actually do a follow-through.
Yeah.
So still at that time, man, this dude pestered me for a whole month. And when I tell this story, it really it gives me chills because he saw something inside of me I couldn't see in myself. So he's telling me, "Randy, just try it, please. Like, you got to be invited anyway." So I don't know what gyms are like nowadays, but back then in those times, you couldn't just walk in off the street and say, "Yo, I want to be a fighter. Can I just join?" Like, no, this is a private class because you got fighters back here already,
Yeah.
right? So these fighters are spending time with their coach, and their coach is giving them their undivided attention. They got fights to prepare for, so they don't have time for that crap, right?
Sure.
So finally, I just said, "All right, cool, man. I'm gonna give it a shot." I go back there, sparring with these guys who they've already had 4, 5, 10 plus fights, and I did substantially well. And that instructor, he stopped me, he pulled me over to the side and said, "Hey, man, you can be a champion one day."
Hmm.
Now, I'm 19 years old at that
Wow.
time. So I'm looking at him like, "You are stupid. Like, have you not seen the Rocky movies? Have you not seen like all that stuff that Rocky's doing? And he's a champion, right?
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, all those guys, those are champions." I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm 19, I'm 195 pounds, like what?
Yeah.
And but that's really where it started for me. And what's crazy about that story, PJ, is I never saw that guy ever again,
Hmm.
ever again. So yeah, so it was like once I went in and started training, I realized, you know what, I like this. And
Sure.
that's about 9 months later. I had my first amateur fight. I won it by like a 25-second knockout. Uh, I fought again. I won to a decision, and I decided to turn pro. I had one pro fight, and then that's kind of when you and I met. So I actually made it to the World Combat League with 2 amateur fights and one pro fight.
Wow.
But so yeah, and then all the rest is history. 20
Yeah.
years old. I was 20 years old when I first had my first amateur fight.
No kidding. So 20 years old. How'd you feel at that first fight? Getting in a fist fight in front of a crowd of people. I mean, for me, especially at first, was terrifying. Like,
Right.
I was not the guy that gets in bar fights, and that I wasn't a natural fighter. I did it because it was sports. It was working out. It gave you a six pack. It was cool. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So how did you
Right.
feel? What was the feeling going into your first fight?
So I didn't really know what to feel. I saw a few local fights just to kind of go fill out the arena, kind of see what the crowd is like. And with any fights, when you got people out there screaming, yelling, "Bite his ear off," and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, okay,
Punch him in
this
the
is
face. Yeah, no
yeah,
kidding.
punch him, yeah,
I
punch him in the
know.
face, yeah, kick him. It's okay.
Yeah. That was the plan going in, dude. Thanks.
And so like for me, it really didn't, I guess, resonate that I could really do it. But I knew my skill sets as a martial artist was better than some of the guys that I seen fight. I'm not saying I thought I was the best at that time, but I knew how to punch, I knew how to kick, I knew how to defend myself if I
Yeah.
could. And especially after doing a couple of full contact classes, I said, okay, well, I think I might could do this. So I remember actually telling my mom. So actually, I sat both of my parents down because I was still living at home. I didn't have any money at the time, so I'm living at home, and I said, "Hey, guys, guess what? So you know those fights that we kind of went to a couple months back?" And it was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I'm fighting this weekend in one of them." And so I got two reactions. Uh, Mom was like, "Whoa, no, 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 no,
Don't do
no!"
it.
Like out of because she comes from a corporate world background. So she's saying, out of all the things in this world you could do, you're gonna go jump in some ring, some stinky, smelly, probably unsanitized ring, let some old hairy, stinky old man beat on my baby boy. Like you can go do anything. How much rather you go bag groceries, right?
Yeah.
And dad's like, nah, this is like, yeah, that's my
Yep.
boy. That's like bringing this hot girl home to dad. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's like a proud dad moment.
Yeah.
But so I kind of had a 50-50 kind of like, I'm nervous, but I'm not. But I remember when I got in there after that first punch, it's like it all went away.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it happened in 35 seconds, but I felt pretty good. I did.
Yeah. It's pretty fast. Not,
Yeah.
not, not a lot of fighters have 35 seconds as their first fight. You're doing a few things right if that happens. So you moved though really fast. So
Yes.
two amateur fights, one professional fight, and then you're on television. Then you're after one pro fight, you're where I was at on the World Combat League, where people are watching on television, worldwide TV. Everybody knows who you are at that point after almost no fights. Now you went pretty fast though too from there. So you went from that point all the way through the World Combat League. That show, eventually went under. But then you moved on, and you were fighting big name guys. You were in K1, Glory Kickboxing, all the biggest shows that exist. Kind of tell us how that went too, because it's fast. You didn't have 10, 15 years to progress to that point. I mean, this was like 2 years, 3 years maybe, and you're already there. So how did that work for you? How were you able to go from, two amateur fights, one pro fight, and then big time?
Honestly, it's just being 35 years old, talking about it right now. I don't know how.
Yeah,
I mean, we can always say that's probably obviously it was God's work, right?
sure.
But I remember I got invited to the World Combat League because we fought for the Oklahoma Destroyers.
Yep.
It was really I was invited because the coach was Dale Cook at that time.
Yeah.
He couldn't find anybody.
Yeah.
So when I tell the story, I tell it because a lot of people think that I was actually skilled and good enough to be on that team. And we know with two amateur fights and one pro fight, you ain't got a lick of nothing to be going with those guys in that league who
Yeah.
already had world titles, and it was a lot of big name, high caliber fighters
Sure.
already. And so he couldn't find anybody in Oklahoma who could represent.
Hmm.
So that's really how I was invited. It was just really saying, "Hey, I need this spot to be filled.
Yeah.
We already got a guy. He's a knockout artist. He's gonna wipe out everybody in his division,
Yeah.
and you're just gonna basically ride the bench. You're gonna be the backup, the alternate, but be a good team player, be a good cheerleader. If somebody needs a towel, somebody needs back rub,
Yeah.
some motivation, some attaboy. Be that type of guy, but also see what these guys are doing because I think that is the best way to become great or become really good. You got to get around people who know what they're doing. You can't be the
Yeah.
best guy in the room because you ain't going to get nowhere. So, hey, see how these guys are warming up. See what these guys are doing as far as pre-fight rituals. See how these guys fight. Be right there, and then hopefully next year, we might can kind of throw you in there, but we'll take you back to the local circuit and get you a couple of wins under your belt, so you're not coming into this thing with two
Yeah.
fights and one pro fight. So that didn't quite go as planned as we thought it did.
Yeah.
I remember, and I'm not sure if you want to say the guy's name just for the sake of for the sake of
Probably
the
for that,
book.
not for the best.
Yeah, not for the best. So we'll just call him Bob because that's what I did in my
Yeah.
book too. But so Bob was slated to fight. He gets out there, and then people, if they don't know what the World Combat League, it was 1 3 minute round. The whole point was no holding, no clinching. It was full throttle action, and you fought in kind of this platform of there was no ropes, there was no cage link fence, so it was built that you had to go forward because if you went back too far, well, you're going off the platform.
Which I did. And it's not
Right,
fun.
right. So these guys are on this platform and they're throwing down. It's a pretty good fight. I'm cheering on. Fight ends because, like I said, it's 3 minutes. And what I liked about the concept too, PJ, it was a lot like basketball and football. You have first half and you have a second half, right?
Yeah.
Well, in between that second half and first half, you have that halftime. So that's what this league was kind of representing. So you're accumulating points for your team
Mm-hmm.
score. It's not about your individualized points. So even if you lose a match, just don't get knocked out because
Yeah.
then you can go back. You can go back out there in that second half. Well, I remember coming back to that locker room, and the guy that was a starter, who was in my weight division, well, I guess I was in his weight class. He comes back and he was like, "Well, dude, I ain't going back out there because my shoulder's jacked up."
Yeah.
And so, I think it was like 3 or 4 coaches on the team at that time,
Yep.
and they were all screaming at him, "No, no, you got to get back out there. Just hold them clenched, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
You may not win, but just score some points." So Bob's attitude and his lack of, I don't know, perseverance, so to say, he could have costed the team the victory because it was more about his pride and his ego
Yeah.
because he was known as the knockout king or whatever you want to call it. He
Yeah, he
was knocking
was.
everybody out,
Yeah.
and so since he broke his or tore something in his shoulder where he couldn't use his dominant hand, he didn't want to go back out. He said, "No, forget this. I'm not going back out." I mean, they begged him, and keep in mind, we only have 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So
It was a
this is
quick
all,
turnaround there.
and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, "Oh, this might be my shot." But no, there's no way because they already told me I've only got 2 amateur fights and 1 pro fight. They'll go find somebody in the crowd. They'll go pick that guy and throw him out there before they put me out there. And so I kind of remember one of the coaches comes and slapped me up on the back of my shoulder. He goes, "Well, I hate to do this to you, Randy, but we got to put you out there. we gotta we gotta throw you out there." So that's how I got my start to all the rest of this. But that's also how I got my nickname Boom Boom because when I got out there, the guy that I fought, he hadn't been knocked out. He was already a seasoned veteran. He already had 10, 15, 20 plus fights. I hung in there with him and hit him with 2 spinning back kicks, knocked him out. And that really just kind of that was the kickstarter to Randy Blake having that alter ego, that boom boom character,
Yeah.
because then that led to world title fights for ISKA. Then it led to me getting highly recruited by K1. I got a chance to ride that circuit. I fought guys like Dewey Cooper, high caliber pioneer in kickboxing. I
Yeah.
beat him. It led me to fight Crow Cop. And with Crow Cop, everyone assumed I was going to get knocked out because by that time I was 25 years old. And even though I had sustained these world titles, I still hadn't fought anybody on that international level.
Yep.
So a guy whose nickname that's left leg cemetery, yeah, was it left kick cemetery, right leg hospital.
Yeah.
You're going to get laid out because if you see this guy's highlights, he literally knocked out like 1,000 dudes with that left
Yes.
leg. So
Yeah. Mirko Cro Cop at the time was like one of the biggest stars in the entire world in kickboxing,
right,
the UFC,
right,
literally in every combat sport. Mirko Cro Cop was a nightmare to fight. Like nobody would have wanted to fight this guy at that time.
right. And honestly, me being a 25-year-old, and my confidence was good at that time. I was winning fights, I was knocking guys out. So I never looked at Crow Cop like okay, this guy's a dangerous guy. It was after the fact that I fought him, and then I looked this stuff up on YouTube, and I said, "What was I thinking?" Like, but it's crazy is because maybe he was supposed to knock me out, but I actually knocked him down.
Yeah.
I hit him with the vicious right hand. I mean, he won the fight to a split decision, or it was a split majority decision.
Very close.
But the fact that I was able to hang in there with a rock star
Yeah.
kickboxing pioneer, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that just kind of just shot me up in the ranks as far as, okay, this Randy Blake guy, he's not somebody to be playing around with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You're on a world level now. You're out
right,
of the you're in the mix with everybody else, every other name fighter that's out there now. You're part of that now. So that's huge, man.
right.
That's especially at 25. You started at 19. You're 6 years in. 6 years prior, you had watched your first fight, and now you're fighting Mirko Krokop, a guy that sends people to the cemetery with a left leg kick. Which is
Crazy.
yeah, unbelievable. So let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
You're world champion kickboxer. Sports,
Mm-hmm.
you've been super, super successful. We talked about this earlier. There's typically no second act for fighters. So
Mm-hmm.
you fight. So the typical fighter would have done this. I'm a little blurry there. So the typical fighter would have done this. They would have gone and fought Mirko. They would have kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting. Maybe 10, 15 fights down the road, they start to lose and they start to have injuries, but they still need to keep fighting because that's their identity. That's all they know how to do. So, but instead though, Randy, you wrote a book, you made a documentary, you're a life coach now. How were you able to transition from fighting into the business life?
Um, you know, I think I was able to transition because of that path as a young guy. And
Mm,
I think when you're around it so much, you ultimately realize that's what you don't want to become. Because I've had a chance to fight some older guys,
yeah.
and obviously I was on the, giving in of the punches, and I was able to knock those guys out. But the more I did it, I realized, no, eventually, if I stick around in this game long enough, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be that 38, 45 year old trying to fight these 25-year-olds, and I don't care how tough you think you are,
Seriously.
you are not going to beat those guys. Now, for granted, you may have all the skill sets, you may be the better fighter, you may have the more decorated record, all the proceeds may actually be on your side, but this guy's got that fire. He's got that testosterone. He's got
Yes.
that dog, and he don't know what he don't know, and he angry, and he hungry, and he's
Yeah.
gonna knock you out.
Yeah.
So I told myself, I don't want to do that, and so it was just something that kind of stirred up in me because I realized too there's not a whole lot of money in kickboxing,
Yeah.
So at this point, how many fights can I really do if you're not really making anything? You got house payments. Yeah, I got a kid now.
Yeah.
She's got diapers. I want to be able to buy her things, and I can't say, all right, baby, I'm gonna go jump in the ring with some 22-year-old and get knocked out for a couple $1,000s. That's
Yeah.
no, that's because I'm thinking about this too, PJ, from a perspective of I want to be able to have my brain. I want to be able to play with my kids.
Yeah.
I want to be able to be around when my kids have kids and be able to tell these stories and be able to extract from my life and be a part and not be a vegetable. So yeah, it's led to life coaching. It's led to writing this book. It's led to speaking gigs. I'm able to go and talk to colleges and talk to all types of elementary schools from pre-K to senior. I've done it all, but that's really why I've done it, was so that when I do retire, I have something to go into, and
Yeah.
I don't have to face that temptation of, okay, I have nothing else to do. I have no other skill sets, so I have to keep fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you basically took all the skills you took in the fighting game, all the determination, stepping in there after when the coach pats you on the back and says, looks like you're going to have to go in. You took those
Right.
skills and that, hey, let's just do it. Let's just see what happens. And you ran that into the business world, and that isn't, not a lot of people do that. The vast majority of fighters don't do that. A lot of very successful business people, though, were at some point in combat sports. So if
Right.
you're able to transition, and it's not easy, if you're able to transition, you can do really, really well. So you had a documentary, a movie that was released at a theater, and then at the same time you released a book.
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to do that? Like what caused a book and a documentary?
Yeah, so the crazy story. So this book came about from 2020. So 2020 was a very trying year for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at one point in time, the whole world was shut down. Like they told us, stay inside. Don't go outside because if you went outside, you might catch COVID, even if you go in your backyard. Somehow COVID's gonna come swooping up over the gate and go up in your nostrils, and you got it right. So I said, okay, I think I can do this. I mean, I'm now using my martial arts principles. Maybe I might just show a little bit of patience and integrity. Let's just do the right thing when nobody even knows. I probably go outside. So I'm Netflixing. I'm watching everything on Netflix, man. I'm video gaming. I got bored, just like anybody would. How much Netflix can you watch? How many video games can you play before you say, all right, I'm bored? So the next best thing, what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to Google myself because I had never done that before. I had never watched any of my fights on YouTube or looked up any of the
Really?
comments or any of that stuff. I mean, I've always had people tell me, like, hey, man, I looked you up and I saw that you were legit. I saw you have a Wikipedia and whatnot. So those are some of the ideas that came about. And when I looked up Wikipedia, I said, okay, well, this is right, but this isn't right. So it was very like 50-50. It was very skewed. It wasn't where I wanted it.
Yeah.
And my record was the biggest thing that just hurt me because I'm like, I got way, this is showing I haven't fought since 2014. And so now I'm going back going, okay, I'm adding up all my fights. This is where the record should be. But then at the bottom of it, you have like hyperlinks and you can click different articles and things that people have attached to that Wikipedia. And you would find things on there like, Randy Blake is, 5'10", 135 pounds. He's got 15 wives and he's got three or four husbands, and it's all crazy crap, right?
Yeah.
And right about that time, I found out I was going to be a dad, like
Nice.
literally, like 3 or 4 days later.
Nice.
So that's like getting hit in the face by Mike Tyson. I've never been hit by Mike Tyson, but I can only imagine
Yeah.
that's what it would feel like. Because now, at that point, PJ, now it hits me. I'm like, okay, my daughter, I know what the gender was at that time, but I'm thinking my child is going to eventually have access to the internet at some point in time, right? And these kids nowadays, they're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, where they can operate those phones and iPads better than you and I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't want to have that conversation with my daughter, who I know who the gender is now, where, because I don't care who you are, whatever you read on the internet, even if it's false, it's real to that kid. It's hard to explain to a kid
Absolutely.
that something that I just read is not real. So I said, well, how do I fix that? And I'm Googling, I'm brainstorming, I'm trying to come up with ways of how to fix it. And I said, well, let me just get on Wikipedia and ask them to take that down. You can't do that. You can't go to somebody else's YouTube video and say, take all those negative, mean things you said about me off so my daughter doesn't see it. No, then they're going to probably write some more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, okay, well, I think the best thing to do is just to write a book. So that's what I did. I said, okay, if I get this book and I can get it into the Library of Congress, you can't erase the book. It'll always be there forever, right?
Yeah.
So I did this not for my legacy, but I did it for my daughter and future kids to know who daddy is. And then also, we're all not going to be here forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also thinking, well, what if some kid somehow comes across Randy Blake 500 years from today and wants to do a book report okay, I'd much rather you do a book report over, okay, this guy was a champion and got in there and fought these guys with 2 amateur fights and 1 pro fight, rather than, oh man, this guy had 15 wives and just mess like
Yeah.
that. So that's kind of how the book came about. So the book would have released in, I would say, 2021,
Mhm.
but just some things happened, and it worked out perfectly because I rewrote this book like 5 times. So this book right now is about 100 pages. The very first book I wrote was like 500 pages,
Oh,
and so
wow.
I said nobody's gonna read that. That's just too much. So I took this book and I made it more about the principles that have helped me in my life. So, but we're tying it in with real life stories,
Mhm.
and so right around that time, I'm doing the math on the world title fight, which that was back in 2012. So that's how the documentary came up. I said, oh, this would be a great idea if I did kind of a 10-year anniversary on when I first captured the world title. Because if you look up any of my fights on YouTube, that first world title fight's not even on there. None of those
Hmm.
fights in those early days are on there. I think the Chuck Norris World Combat League is on there, but that's it. Well, how did I get to there? So that's kind of where that documentary came into play. So 2022 comes along, June 1st, we got the book release, we got the documentary release, and I said, man, this would be the perfect strategy is to release a book and a documentary
Absolutely.
in the same day.
Yeah.
And the documentary has nothing to do with the book. So if you watch the documentary, don't think that, okay, I saw this cool documentary that I don't have to buy the book. No, you have to.
Yeah.
So don't
Yeah.
think that
It's the next
because you
step.
buy the book. Right. So they these are two components that they go together. There's some similarities in there, but you got to get both of them.
Okay.
So
Okay. So we'll talk about where you can get the book, in a little
mhm.
bit as well. Yeah. So what you did basically was you found a bunch of inaccuracies online, and unfortunately,
Yes,
online you can literally say anything you want. I can say, Randy Blake is 5'7", 135 pounds, and he's never kickboxed a day in his life. I could say
yes,
that. I could post it as many places as possible, and people would believe me. No matter
yep,
what, they would believe me 100% of the time.
absolutely.
So unfortunately, that's just the way the internet works. So putting something out there, not necessarily, like you said, if you were to contact those people and say, hey, change that, that's not nice, they're going to get even worse. So what you
Right,
do is you go around that and put actual factual information out there to combat that. And, I think that's the smartest strategy you could have done, versus just debating back and forth with, honestly, idiots online they don't care.
absolutely.
They're just trying to get a rise out of you, trying to get likes and follows anyway. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So guys, get the book. It is number one. It's a number one Amazon bestseller today. Like I said, June 24th. So yeah, definitely get that. I want to shift gears a little bit too, because you are a
Okay.
life coach as well. And this is a business
Hmm.
podcast. So you run a business.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
so what can people expect when they meet with you? Is it going to be a Zoom call? Is it going to be in person? What can people expect when they start working with world kickboxing champion Randy Blake?
So I do in person. Obviously, that's for the people who live here in town, but I try to keep it more Zoom calls because we can do a 15, 20, 30 minute just kind of a consultation. So I'm a certified goal success life coach. So you have different niches out there that means life coach. So where I come in is my job is not, I'm not your therapist, and I always try to tell people that when this isn't going to be, I'm gonna lay you down on the couch, then we're gonna talk about all these problems what mommy and daddy did to you, 15, 20. I'm like, no, we're not doing that, you know. But however, I'm not gonna do the work for you. What I can do is I can take the sledgehammer, okay, and I can bust a hole in the wall, okay. And what I want to do for you is have you take and maybe build up from the ground up. So, as a life or as a goal success life coach, my job is to help you define what success is to you. So, success has many different definitions. Some people think that, oh, success means I need to drive a Maserati, or I need a Lamborghini, or, I want to lose weight, or I want to be a world champion kickboxer. Well, see, that's the problem. Like, there is a process to that. So my job is to sit down with that client and we strategize and we build vision boards. There's you got to have a vision. You have to have goals. We're built to be goal oriented. Without goals, you have failure. And as a fighter, I mean, goals are simply, okay, if I've got this fight on this day, I may have to start 4 or 5 weeks back. I got to eat right. I got to make some sacrifices and some changes. I got to get X amount of rounds on the bag, speed bag. I got to get X amount of rounds of sparring, and this will enhance me getting my hand raised. So that's kind of what the success coaching is with me, because a lot of people don't actually think that. They just think that, because a lot of it too, PJ, is because we live in a world of we're desensitized. And why are we desensitized? It's because of what you and I are using right now. These tablets, these iPads, these iPhones.
Yeah.
So you can literally, at the dispense of your hand, you can Google something or say, hey, Google, or hey, Siri. You can ask a question, you can get anything. Well, that's the problem. A lot of people get discouraged when they don't get things their way on that first try, because they never had to work for it. So that's kind of my idea, and my goal with these people is we got to sit down, we got to figure out what is success, and then we got to figure out, okay, what are some goals that can be achieved between now and the end of today, a week from today, 6 months from today, a year from today, and we stay in that realm. And then next thing you know, you start hacking away at these goals, and then you're off into your destination, and then you achieve them.
Yeah.
But there is a process. It is a process, but it's just getting those people to see, okay, it takes a little bit of work, but it's really not that much if you'll sit down, write it on pen and paper, and then next thing we know, we're knocking off our goals.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, so I've met a lot of coaches, a lot of life coaches. And what I find is maybe not so legitimate with the majority is they don't have anything to base it on. They don't have anything to base their coaching on. They haven't accomplished something. They haven't worked super hard to achieve a goal. Whereas you have, you worked incredibly hard to build something, regardless of what it is. You built something. You built a life and a business that you can use as the backbone to help other people achieve their specific goals, regardless of what they are. And I notice you've talked to you go around and speak too. You don't just sit in the house and hope they show up. You're out there talking to groups of people. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the groups that you've gone out there and met with in person.
Yeah, so I've done everything from elementary schools, young kids. I do mid-range adults. I do corporate speaking. I've done colleges. And then my most recent project I just did a few months back was I got into a prison. That was, I would say, that was my biggest accomplishment, because that wasn't even on my list of goals. I didn't even know that was even possible to do. I just had somebody reach out to me and say, hey, would you mind going down into this prison and speak to these guys? They had this entrepreneurship program. It's called Imagine Freedom. This is in Oklahoma. So where I'm at in Tulsa, this prison is about an hour and a half from where I stay. So it's literally, when you see the movies with the prisons, it's just like this long road on this secluded area, like nothing out there. You got gas stations that like the sign is kind of hanging off, like like you have a church just like the size of a little playhouse for your little daughter. I mean, and then you come to this prison where it's like 30 feet high fences and barbed wires, and it's the legit thing.
Yeah.
So I took it on because I said, okay, this program is obviously for these guys who are going to be getting out. So they're looking for ways and ideas to where when they get out, they know what their goals are, they know what their focus is, and so they don't end up doing anything stupid to go back. So going down there, man, that was super humbling. It was very humbling, because I think sometimes in life we don't appreciate things until either we lose it or until we have to actually go down in the heart of people who don't have what you and I have.
Sure.
And there's a lot of things I can say maybe I've taken for granted. And going down there, I'm seeing, okay, all these guys have to wear the same clothes, the same color. They don't get to eat pizza. They don't get to turn on the television and watch what they want to watch. They don't have access to the internet. They can't just call anybody. There's a
Sure.
lot of things that, like, okay, me, I'm a shower guy. I love that's me time to me. Shower time, right? These guys have to share showers.
Yeah.
They got to share toilets, and they don't get hot water. It's just things like that we take for granted, man. But I will say this: when I went down there, I walk into the building, and everyone's on their feet. And I get the
Right.
biggest applaud. These guys were so in tune to what I was saying. I told my life story. I told it from a perspective of the goal set mind of a champion. So that's kind of my title that I stick with, because we're all need to be goal driven. So I told them I didn't get there just because I woke up one day and just said, "Oh, I want to go do this." I told them how I told you guys.
Yeah.
Somebody else saw something in me that was them breaking down the wall for me to go in and build from the ground up. And so I just basically gave them some ideas on goal setting and what they could do. And it was probably one of the best times I had as far as speaking thus far.
That's awesome. And it's not easy to talk in a prison. It's not easy to talk to a group of people that you maybe initially don't have a connection with, or don't have, they're not entrepreneurs. You're not talking to a bunch of business guys that are, you know, planning their next sales or anything like that. You're talking to a group of guys that are at rock bottom, and you have to convince them, and you have to relate to them somehow. So it's not easy at all, especially when you walk in, you're free, they're not. They look at you, they're like, what's this guy going to say? So actually to make
Right.
an impact on them is significant.
Yeah. And I will say this with these guys too, because you're definitely right on that. And that's why I went down, because I think sometimes we need that role model. We need somebody who has done something
Yeah,
just to kind of spark that interest in our eyes to
sure.
want to do better. But I will say with these guys, they all had business plans. So I was slated to go down for about an hour, give my speech, talk, answer a few questions, and leave. That turned into about a 3 hour deal.
Yeah.
So I did my talk, and then it turned into about an hour and a half of just Q&As. Then it turned into, well, can we get autographs? Can we get pictures? So, and then it turned into, well, I want to see what you guys got. So I literally had these guys stand up and give me a business presentation as if they were trying to give me a sales pitch. And every last guy there, they're on the right path. So they'll tell you, this is how I got in here. But when I was in school, I had straight A's.
Hmm.
I had guys that had straight A's. They scored a 30 on the ACT. I mean, these guys,
Wow.
they had it all. And that's what's so fascinating with guys that are in prison. Sometimes they just made the wrong decision at that small
Yeah.
time in their life, and it cost them everything. So it simply reminds me, don't do that, right?
Yeah.
But but
Avoid
I
the epic
simply
fall is the term
right.
I've gotten from
don't
somebody.
don't find the guy that wrote the article about me having 15 wives and go beat him up, right?
Yeah, right.
but uh but yeah, so it was a great time.
Awesome.
They're on the right path, and I'm looking forward to I guess seeing what they do in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. So
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. So what's the overall vision for Randy Blake right now? What's your vision? What's the future going to look like for you?
I think my vision right now is to continue to make goals, set them, and set the example. Um, I think sometimes when people look at me, they go, "Oh, well, you're this 5-time world champion, and you just don't know what life is like. You just, life is just so easy for you because you've always had it all given to you." And so that's why I put the documentary out. That's why I put the book out. This is why I'm doing all these things to show people, yeah, with hard work, with vision, with goals, You can accomplish anything. But I also just want to let you know that I became a world champion in kickboxing, but that's what I did. Now my goal is I want to become a world champion father, right? So you may want to become a world champion at podcasting. We could all become world champions. So that's my idea. Is I'm trying to spark that interest into what does success mean to you, right? And then just be a good example to a lot of these fighters. It's not that you can't go out to the UFC. It's not that you can't go become the next world kickboxing champion. You know what? You can, but you need to have a plan. You need to have goals, and I can help you get there. And even if you don't get there, at least have a plan on what can you do, because we don't want to become that 45-year-old who's still fighting for a couple $100,
Yeah.
getting beat up, because you're gonna get beat by the 25-year. That's just the reality of it.
Yes, you are.
So that's kind of my goal.
Right on. Guys, if you're looking for a great life coach with a legitimate life coach, one that has actual real world experience and they can actually teach you something, not just things they read out of a book, hit up Randy Blake. Randy, where can people get hold of you?
So I have Facebook, Randy Blake. I have Instagram, RB3 Boom. I have Twitter. I have LinkedIn. All that stuff is under Randy Blake. So I pretty much have the same profile picture. So if you find one, you should find all of them.
Okay.
But yeah, that's I think that's it. Yeah. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter.
Awesome. And look him up on YouTube. He's got lots of cool videos where he spins around and kicks people in the face and does all kinds of cool things there too. Randy, anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah. So I still have a flash sale going on for my book.
Okay.
That's 99 cents. That's for my e-book. So one thing I do ask, if you purchase the book, please leave us a 5-star review, and enjoy the book. Or maybe if you already have a copy, you could gift it, purchase another one, and then send it off to somebody else. Maybe it can help their life.
Absolutely. Yeah, guys, leave 5-star reviews. It helps a ton. And grab the book. It's a #1 bestseller. Of course, you want to get that.
Yes.
Randy, here's the big question we finish every podcast. Look at that laugh right away.
Oh, man.
Here's the big one. All right, drum roll.
All right.
We are LandLife. I buy and sell dirt all over the country. Actually, a lot in Oklahoma. If you could buy land anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Wow. I thought about this so hard, and this may sound crazy. It just might sound crazy, but I can give you an honest, authentic answer because I've had a chance to see the world.
Yeah.
I had a chance to go to Japan. I've had a chance to go to all parts of Europe. I've been to Istanbul, Turkey. I mean, you name it. I've been Bahamas. I've seen everything for what it is, whether it was oceanside to mountaintop, and it's all beautiful. But you're asking me where would I buy land and obviously live?
Yeah.
And it would be right here. If I could buy a lot of land and kind of do like this compound area, like just buy about 200, 300 acres, and build my own community, I would do it right here in Tulsa. The reason is because the cost of living is a lot cheaper than it is in most states.
Yeah.
As crazy as gas is right now, gas is still pretty cheap. It's not cheap. It's just cheaper here.
Everyone's going to be driving to Tulsa here in a minute.
Right. So when gas was already $4 in other states, it might have been $2 here. If it was $2 in one of the big states, it was probably $1.15 here. It's always been a little bit cheaper here. When things are a little cheaper, you can do a little bit more. So, and you can invest in more. So that's what I would do.
Perfect. Tulsa, 200 to 400 acres somewhere near Tulsa. We're going to set up a huge compound. There's going to be a training facility. It's going to be awesome. Randy, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you stopping by. And like I said, guys, if you want a legitimate life coach, call Randy. hit him up online and get the book, guys. Otherwise, till next time, I'll see you on LandLife.